Welcome back, everyone, to the Freemium podcast. Khoury's looking at me with a face of absolute disgust, but we're gonna keep it.
Did he ask you to do the intro?
No, I asked him to do the intro.
You asked him to do it?
Yeah.
Okay, that was a mistake.
If everyone's wondering who I am, a little introduction. Michael Saracino. I was one of the early guests on Curtis's podcast.
I think you were the third.
Second or third, 100%, yeah.
Yeah.
And, not to worry, Curtis is still here today, obviously.
I haven't left.
Just in a little bit of a different role today. I'm going to be today's guest host for a debate. It's going to be absolutely electric. So let's introduce our two guys. On one side of this debate, we have the CEO himself, Mr. Curtis Killen. Let's give a big round of applause. You have anything to say?
I have nothing to say right now, Mike.
Absolutely nothing?
I have nothing to say right now.
No, that intro did it all.
For all the regular listeners out there, you might be familiar with the other person on the side of this debate. This is your third appearance on the podcast.
Will be my third, yeah.
Yeah, third appearance.
I feel like you're the guy who's been on this podcast the most.
And I just want to start with this. That is a fact. He's been on, and Bill Mitchell has also. I don't think you know Bill Mitchell.
I don't.
But this all started from our Facebook debates back in the day. Mm-hmm. And I always remember the point. It was Khoury Wawalski. He made a comment underneath our comment or online debate. And he goes, it was funny the way he wrote it. He goes, I find myself, he goes, you both make such good points. I find myself flip-flopping between issues.
Yeah, he's an idiot.
But that's why this debate's gonna be absolutely electric. And I haven't so excited.
What are we gonna talk about, Mike? So what do we got to?
Are we
give us a
diving
little
right in? Okay. Well,
yeah,
first of all,
give us a little overview. Let's get to enough fluffy stuff. Give
All
us
right,
a little
enough fluffy
overview
stuff.
of what we're gonna talk about today.
I want the debate to be fairly free flowing, so it's gonna be like a hybrid thing. Yeah. I'm gonna ask some questions. I'll pose it to one of you two. You'll have some time.
I like this.
It's a bit of rebuttal, and then it'll just be an open floor, chaotic sort of dance between you guys.
We promise not to yell as much this time.
Okay, can we throw it to you if ever we want?
I mean, look, I'm gonna be like Switzerland over here, so I'm gonna be very unbiased.
Right.
You're gonna abstain.
I mean, maybe I'll interject every now and then, but I think
maybe poke a little bit,
poke the bear here and there.
You definitely know how to do that.
What I wanted to also say is a little wager. How about a little wager? And we let the fans decide who kind of wins overall.
Okay.
And I was thinking that the loser has to donate, I don't know, $100, small sum of money, to the winner's political party of their choice.
To whatever political party. So
whatever political party the winner decides, you got to send $100 in name.
That. We'll do that. Let's do that.
Okay. It doesn't have to be a Canadian party. It could be like Khoury could be sending Trump $100, which I find it to be absolutely hilarious.
Okay.
We were supposed to have that bet in golf.
Yeah, you didn't come.
Well, it wasn't my fault that my flight got moved when I was going to Europe.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty valid excuse, no?
Yeah, it is. I wasn't upset.
Okay.
But you brought it up.
Yeah, okay, fair.
All right. So let's just dive right in.
Let's go.
I think, couple weeks ago, Prime Minister Trudeau was in Montreal, no? He was at a coffee shop?
He went to Bernie Bain as well.
Yeah.
Shout out to Bernie Bain. He's been a guest on the podcast. Dean.
Very cool. Prime Minister Trudeau's been in office for about 8 years now, so I feel like it'd be a good time to kind of like unbiasedly maybe ask a couple of questions. After someone's been in office for so long, I feel like we can kind of judge and evaluate, critique somewhat unbiasedly. So my first question for you guys is let's just discuss Canada's current, unemployment, inflation, and national debt under the Liberal and the Trudeau administration. Mm-hmm. I'm going to throw this one up, and I'll start off with Curtis, given that it is his podcast.
Sure.
So, go for it.
So I think right now, I'm not without mentioning political parties, but I'm not a big fan of the current Liberal Party. I think they're a lot further left than Liberal parties were in the past. Canada was sold a bill of goods that was supposed to be, hey, we're supposed to be getting a Liberal Party. And we've gotten, I would say, even debatably left of what NDP is. He's grown the government. I can see Mike kind of it's just having his face.
He does need a piece of paper.
He's drastically grown the government. So since he took office in 2015, he's increased the amount of civil servants, bureaucrats, by 27%. He's outpaced our population growth by 9%. So, because the argument would people would be saying, well, the population's gone up, so therefore we're hiring more bureaucrats. That's correct. But he has outpaced our population growth by 9% with regards to bureaucrats being hired. I think we have a massive productivity issue, and it's not just me saying that. The Bank of Canada is saying that. Leaders of banks are saying that. When you have a productivity issue in a country, people's standards of living start to fall. Companies don't invest in your country. Things get expensive. You become less competitive. And I think this is going to be the first time in a really long time that the next generation, our generation, is going to be less well off than our parents and their parents, et cetera, et cetera. I really think that if we don't fix things quickly here in Canada, and how do we fix things? It starts by trimming off some of the fat with regards to how big government has gotten. I'm not happy at all with the attack on free speech at all. And I don't know. It's like the Canada we're in today, I really feel is not like the Canada of 10, 15 years ago. We were always like, Canada was always a really nice place to grow up. I love being a Canadian. I love my country. And, you know, like you could say that maybe there was like a little bit of an attack on excellence for like people that wanted to make a lot of money, they would go down to the US. Okay, you could say that. That's fine. But overall, you know, I like having the free healthcare. I thought our education system is fantastic. I mean, some of the elementary school teachers that I had, they changed my life. Like, so overall, I think the country was fantastic. And I don't know, I just feel like as Canadians, we're having trouble identifying around our common values and like, what does it mean to be a Canadian? And I think a lot of people have a different answer for that question, which is not good if you're running a nation.
Awesome. I like that opening statement. Mike's been furiously writing down things. So let's hear a little bit of a rebuttal.
All right. Well, I'll just start.
So enthusiastic.
Start with that comment that that the Liberal government is left of NDP.
Okay.
I don't know on any measurable scale how that is true. The Liberal government is there's such a little difference between the NDP, the Liberals, and the Conservatives that regardless of whichever one is in power, your daily life will not change at all, essentially, in my opinion. There's only so much you can do, and that's the whole point of a system of government and of having multiple parties, is that regardless of whether the government has a majority or not, it's always tempered by the other two parties that will have more than, do you know what I mean? That'll have 40% of the elected officials. So I think there's a problem with perspective. If you look over like the course of history and you plot the NDP or the Liberals on a scale of the most left-wing to the most right-wing governments, they're all still on the right-wing side. We notice we pick out like these little differences in their policies, and sure, one is more left-wing than another, but not to the point where it'll even make a measurable difference in the lives, in the daily lives of individuals. So I don't know I'm not sure what you're basing yourself on to say that the Liberals are left of NDP. But I'd like to, before I move on to my next point, I'd like to know what you think Trudeau did bad in particular. That, and not bad in particular, because there's a lot of bad things every government does.
Yeah.
What did he do bad that someone else would have done differently, that would have made a measurable difference?
I don't know if someone would have done it differently. I have no idea. But what I can critique is the person who's in power now. So I'll just.
With that being said, I
keep
just want to. I don't. I'm not a fan necessarily of him. So I'm
I know.
Yeah, I just want to make that clear.
It's just like, we're not endorsing any particular politician here today. But to answer the question, I'll just keep it simple. He doesn't know what he's doing when it comes to running an economy. I'm a businessman. I'm going to obviously have more of a focus on our country and its fiscal spending, and that's just
So what
naturally.
did he spend on? Like what?
He doesn't know how to. Well, he's like the example I just gave. The amount of people that are being hired to work for the government is completely out of control.
So
And
okay, so that's the next point.
it's giving, but here I just want to make this
Yeah.
point. In my opinion, there's more the government has never had this much power, and you can look at examples for like the online harms bill. They keep trying to go after censorship online. They keep trying to hammer it. I am a person who likes to. I want the government to leave me alone and stay out of my way, and I'll be fine. And I find that this government, the Liberal government, they are always trying to involve themselves in our day-to-day lives more than any government has done in the recent past. It's like I find it's just they're trying to consolidate power. It's like we have to ask Daddy Trudeau
Where?
I just gave you two examples. Like all these, why do we need to have the government regulate what we're seeing and what we're allowed to say online? Why do we have to have the government do that?
Well, who says that they're doing that? In what
They
in
say
what
they're
way?
doing that.
In what way do you mean?
The bill, they're passing here. I have the bills right here. So this is what they're trying to pass right now. So tax increases, expanding regulation. Example: Online News Act, the Bill C-18. So that's the Facebook and Google stuff, where they wanted to get money from Facebook and Google to show news. That's whatever. And then we have, this is like the big one, Online Harms Bill, that they're just trying to move through the House now. They're going to appoint a Digital Safety Commission of Canada. So these people are basically going to police what you're saying online. And if they deem that it's hate speech, they can come after you, fine you, or arrest you.
Okay, and what's the problem with that?
What? Bro, this is like Big Brother on steroids.
Hate speech is
Excuse
already...
me, this is 1984 on steroids.
Hate speech is already a crime.
Who deems if it's hate speech or not? Who's in charge of saying if it's
But what I'm saying
hate
is
speech
hate
or
speech
not?
already exists as a crime in the criminal code. So who's determining whether it's hate speech? Well, the same people that do it now.
But how recent is that?
Very, very old.
Okay, and
Very, very old.
what constitutes hate speech, or what used to?
It's
like threatening to kill you, threatening to
it's inciting violence against a particular group because they're a member of that particular group.
But what they're doing now is, like, in my opinion, I find, and this is not just the Canadian government that's doing this. A lot of governments are doing this. They're starting to they're starting to expand the definition of what hate speech is. And when you start expanding of what the definition of what it actually is, you can weaponize that against your political opponents, against your people. It's just, I don't want the government regulating, and again, not just the Canadian government, any government. I don't think it's any of their business to be regulating what we're saying online. And you're absolutely right. So they're basically just trying to, like, criminalize some points. And the argument that other people are saying is like, dude, everything that you're saying is a criminal act. It's already a criminal act in the criminal code.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I said.
So it's like, yes, and you're right about that. So why are you trying to put forward this bill?
Well, because it just makes it more clear. Most likely, I haven't read the bill.
But do you think? Okay, let me ask you this: when a government does this, do you think they have good intentions or bad intentions? If everything that they're trying to propose in this bill is already technically, if someone was to do that, is already criminal, and they're trying to kind of just reformulate it.
Well, there's a bunch of laws that are repetitive, but
sure.
Okay, so let me ask.
What do you think? What do you think they're actually after here?
Well, Do
you think they really care if someone's offended online?
Not necessarily offended, but I think they're trying to protect their citizens from a certain behavior,
such as
hate speech.
Like you said, that's been in law for 100 years. So why are they introducing another online bill?
Yes, well, because the bill probably doesn't just criminalize hate speech. It probably establishes, like you said, someone who's going to verify that, because as we've seen, the social media companies are incapable of doing it.
Okay.
Well, I'm asking. So
if
I'll
they're
throw it back to
incapable of
you.
doing it, you think the government's going to be capable of doing it? 500 million posts a day. You think the government's going to do a better job of that?
Well, yeah, because they actually care about protecting their citizens, whereas Facebook there's no money in protecting anyone. And as a matter of fact, that goes against their money-making machine, because the more hateful, the more clicks, the more etc. So Facebook actually has the opposite incentive, meaning that you need someone to be a watchdog over that, because they're not going to regulate themselves.
Well, here's the first. I understand that argument. That's fine. But what I'm saying is, if there's
what's the bad intention in that? What do you think the bad intention is?
I think they're trying to expand their reach and
to
regulate. I don't know. I don't think it's
that's
good.
What I'm saying. Like
I think it's them trying to this is where we always debate.
Yeah, but if you can't identify a motive, it's like Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is always the best. The explanation that's probably provided for in the preamble of the law, and now I'm guessing, is to protect society from this type of speech. And yet you're taking that and you're ascribing a whole other ulterior motive.
Do you agree with the statement that when the government starts to regulate what can and cannot be said, that it can become a slippery slope? You don't think that's a slippery slope?
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
That's my big point. I think it's a slippery slope, and I don't want to have a new commission who is saying what I can or cannot say, or saying what I can or cannot think online. And like you said, it's next to impossible to, in my opinion, I think the Facebook and the X's do actually a pretty good job. When there's 500 million posts in a day, it's very difficult to regulate that. I'm sure it's very difficult. So again, how would the government even, they're not going to be able to regulate.
But look, I don't know the answer to that question, but the answer to your question is most likely found in the law that's prepared. Whenever a law is proposed in Parliament,
yes,
they have this debate that goes on in both chambers, in the Senate and in the House of Commons, where they have industry experts that come and they give their opinions on the law that's being drafted and how it should be drafted. They'll have both people for the law, and you better bet that there's representatives from the social media companies and people against the law that are there and are debating it and that are telling them this is unreasonable, this can't be done. And then other industry experts that maybe aren't in the pockets of these companies will most likely say the opposite. This is something we need. And then the government, as they do for everything else, will balance the interest of business with the interest of their citizens.
Do you think there's less censorship today or more censorship today versus, let's say, 10 years ago?
I mean, you're comparing 10 years ago. Like, would I say there's more censorship today than 10 years ago? Yes.
Okay. Do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
It depends, because I don't consider, when you're talking about censorship, is a very specific word. So I'm actually going to go back on what I just said.
By the way, like if we're going on too much, let's go, gentlemen. Let's wrap this up.
No, I just kind of wanted to recenter us just slightly, because I think that you guys
we're going off on some tangents.
No. I think you guys brought up a lot of good points, and I just want to touch on them and kind of refocus us. So I'm going to just throw out a couple of numbers.
Yeah, don't be shy to butt in when we're
100%. No, it was a good back and forth. I didn't want to.
Okay, cool.
So I'm going to throw out a couple of numbers here, and then you guys extrapolate them as you wish.
Where are these numbers coming from?
Stats Canada.
Fraser Institute.
Okay,
Stats Canada.
That's fine.
So current national debt under we're again talking about the last 8 years, decade. So national debt is on the rise. It's currently at 1.3 trillion.
What was it at before?
I saw that.
Trudeau.
It was up.
Okay.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that it is trending.
It's gone up a lot.
Take it for what you will. That is the number.
Okay.
Inflation over his tenure was as high as 8.2%.
Yep.
And current rate of unemployment is 5.8, which is well below the national average of 8.05. So take some of those numbers and
unemployment
one last
rate
thing.
Right now it's 5.8.
Yeah. And then just one last thing to touch on.
Yep.
Just because you guys both brought it up, after you want to do that, what level of how much should the government be doing? How much their hands when it comes to how can I phrase this? What should the government be putting their hands in and what shouldn't they, right?
What's the role of government when it comes to the economy?
Across the board.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Well,
Well, hold on. That's a big question.
It's 'cause
the
you had brought it
economy
up-
or like society.
Well, no, it's because you had brought up a lot of points when it came to they're trying to censor this and that. So
Yeah.
obviously you have limits to what the government should and shouldn't be doing,
Yeah.
right? So I just kind of want to know where you fall on that. So,
Sure.
but I'll
Yeah.
pass it to Khoury because you
Yeah,
had
sure.
the last one.
I don't think, like, honestly, I don't think you can read too much into those numbers, and I probably would have said the same thing if they were positive. I think that if we're talking about the Prime Minister in particular, or even the government as a whole, I don't think they have the ability necessarily, other than a couple of things that they can do, to really, really impact those numbers. In the sense that, okay, you can look and say, I don't know, Trudeau approved a huge pipeline that employed 10,000 people, and I don't know, that brought the unemployment down. Like, you could always pinpoint something that they did that had an effect or a temporary effect. Like, you know, giving out all the COVID money for sure increased our national debt. There's no doubt about it. Now, would another government have done the same thing? Most likely. Legault did it. And he's more right-wing than Trudeau. I'm assuming you feel that way.
I agree with you. Anyone would have done it.
I think anyone
Yeah.
would have done it,
Yeah.
and they did it in the States.
Yeah.
In the States, they, instead of giving it to people, they gave it to businesses, which was probably even worse.
They gave it to businesses here too.
Yeah, I know. But I think in the States, like, I don't know, nobody's paying. I don't know what it is. I saw something. But I don't know how much you can read into those numbers based on who's in power. Like, inflation was going to go up regardless. This whole cycle probably started 20 years ago and was going to go this way regardless. And that's kind of the point. What I'm saying is that I don't think the government has enough of an ability to control things like that. And too much is left up to the market actors. And again, no individual is responsible for it. I can't point to one CEO and be like, you're the reason for inflation, and you'll never be able to do that. It's a system as a whole. But the inflation is a natural consequence of capitalism, and therefore it's going to happen regardless of who's in power. It's just a matter of how you deal with it afterwards. And I don't know how to deal with it, okay? I'm not an economist, but it seems to me that certain companies are exacerbating the effects of inflation by taking advantage of the particular circumstances we're in and raising prices and maximizing profit at the expense of the rest of society. I think that's fairly obvious in what we've seen in the news recently.
I'm actually going to almost fully agree with you there. It's absolutely
Isn't
not
that lovely. It feels weird.
It's absolutely not Justin Trudeau's fault for having all this debt. This is a global phenomenon right now. Europe's piled up with debt. The U.S. has a lot of debt. Canada has a lot
Trump
of debt.
accumulated shit
Oh,
tons
he did.
of debt
He did
during his presidency. I don't know, but
he did. He accumulated more debt than all the other presidents before him. Obama did the same.
And why
thing.
is that? Like, why is that?
It's just it's
Is
it's
it
like
the
you said.
world we're living in, where like
We're at the end of the Keynesian of a Keynesian. I can never pronounce that properly. We're basically like at the end of the cycle. There's just so much debt in the world. We can't get rid of it. The only way to get rid of it is to monetize the debt. And what monetize the debt means is just like you inflate away the debt. So central banks, they'll keep printing money because you can't possibly, like, we're $1.2 trillion. The U.S. is $40 trillion, and that's not even counting Social Security. Like, you cannot get out of the debt.
But that's what I'm saying. Like, it would probably take, I don't know what the U.S. pays back of their debt every year, but I'm assuming they actually just accumulate more.
Like
they
do,
physically
and
can't
they're
pay
going
it
to
off.
continue to do
Yeah.
that. It's a big game, and this is like what comes down to. Isn't
that like a house of
it's,
cards? Like,
it
it's
is,
like
but
a pyramid scheme.
and the inflation is, it's the biggest tax on the middle class, and this is honestly, I honestly think, I don't think it's market actors, I don't think it's governments. I think the biggest reason that the gap between the rich and the poor is getting bigger and bigger and bigger not only in the U.S., it's happening in Canada, it's happening in Europe. Like this is
slower,
but it's happening.
Yeah.
Is due to the money printing. And when people don't have, if you own assets and you inflate the dollar, you're gonna get richer on paper, but because you own the assets. So it's the asset isn't actually going up. It's just the value of the dollar going down. If you're the middle class and you don't have assets, well, it just gets more and more and more expensive for them to live. And this is like, we have
I very much agree with that.
Yeah.
And it's the same principle of like me looking for a bigger place to buy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, I have all this equity in my condo, but it means absolutely nothing.
It means
because
nothing.
everything else went up in price just as much.
Yeah.
So when you don't have when you have assets, you just break even.
Yes.
At the end of the day, even when it goes up, because it goes up the same amount as your assets went up.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah. So, I guess the point I'm just trying to make is no, it's absolutely not Justin Trudeau's fault. I don't think he's smart enough to understand what's going on anyways, but it's not his fault.
Maybe not. But that's and again, that's at the end of the day. That's why I said they're just figureheads. We don't have a psychiatrist that's our prime minister. We don't have a macro. An economist as our prime minister. We have a guy like whose dad was prime minister. That's his qualifications. None, and Harper before him. Like none of them have any qualifications.
I wouldn't agree with you on that.
I mean,
I think Harper was Harper understood the economy quite well. But I just think how do we work? How do, as Canadians, we work within the framework, the economic framework that we have? Like, here are the rules of the game. Debt's going to keep going up. This isn't going to change. We have to work within what we're the deck of cards that we're dealt.
So if you're saying inflation is going up and money's becoming less valuable, then
I don't say that it is.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
So shouldn't taxes be increased?
Well, they do put taxes up all the time, and you're taxed as a percentage of if I make more money, if I make $100,000 and I'm taxed at 50%, or I make $200,000 taxed at 50%, then it's the same thing.
And do you agree that the maximum tax bracket should cap out at like 250, or do you think it should keep increasing? Let's say from 250 to $1 million, it's another one. From $1 million to $5 million, it's another one.
This is like the never-ending debate. Honestly, I think that accountants love to have a super complicated tax code because they just get to make piles and piles and piles of money. I'm one of those people that just likes to have like flat tax across the board, 30% or whatever the number is. I know it'll never happen, but if I was I like a Margaret Thatcher approach, 30%, or was it 25%? I don't remember what the number was.
I'm glad that you guys kind of touched on taxes right now, and I just want to again throw out.
Is that a good segue?
That was a pretty good segue. You know, it could have gone any way. I'm well prepared. But
whichever way it goes, I'm ready.
I want to know what you guys think of this and where you guys fall. I feel like we're gonna have a divide on this one, but we'll see where this goes.
It's better for clicks, anyways.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't like agreeing with them. Like, damn.
I know. I was kind of disappointed that you did.
Yeah.
No. So it's kind of a known fact. The Liberals, especially over the last 4 years, have been trying to reform some stuff with regards to capital gains, right? So the capital gains inclusion rate, the Liberal Party has been trying to increase it from 50% to 75%. They've been threatening that for years. They're also trying to remove the principal residence exemption, right? So right now, if you own a home and it's your principal residence, you don't pay any taxes on those gains. And an idea that they've been floating around is to stop that. So I just kind of want to know, because you brought up the point of taxes, so I'll float this one over to you, Curtis.
Yeah.
Do you think that this is a positive, a negative, good idea, bad idea, and what are some of the consequences of that?
Based on what you just said, we should agree again.
No.
We should, though, because you just talked about the wealth gap.
Hold on. No. Let me give.
All right, go ahead.
I didn't say I agree.
Give him the floor.
I didn't say. We basically said, well, if the
you agree why there's a wealth gap.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I don't think the solution to fix that. Let me ask the question.
Okay.
I think right now in Canada, and I think a lot of people would agree as well, we are taxed into oblivion. And the Liberal Party, you can't tax our way out of this problem. We have a productivity issue in the country.
How would that help?
Let me answer the question.
Okay.
If we have less tax and we make our country more sexy for foreign investment to come to our country, that would be a net positive for Canadians living here.
How would we get money from that?
Because when businesses come here, we collect taxes off of the stuff that they do here. If it's a service, if they're manufacturing things, we will make, so we're going to tax them. There's income.
So what you're saying is more people paying tax instead of people paying more tax.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
So to answer that question, it would be absolutely detrimental if they put up the capital gains tax to 75%. And I know the argument you're going to make. You're going to say, well, what about like those big companies that have billions and billions and billions of dollars, and it's basically just cash sitting there and they're making money on interest year over year? Okay, that's a good argument. What about the guy? What about myself? What about someone who's just starting off their career? If they make all this money, so I have to pay my income tax, I have to pay all the regulatory bodies, I have to pay a dividend tax if the company makes a profit, I have to pay the corporate tax, I have to pay tax in day-to-day life, I have to pay tax at the store, 15%, I have to pay tax at the gas, I have to pay this goddamn carbon tax. I've paid tax everywhere. And what you're telling me now is the money that I finally have left over for myself to go and invest, and you're going to tax me again even more after I've already paid all my taxes. So, and I know you're going to jump right to the guys who are worth billions and billions and billions of dollars, and it's the easiest thing. But a guy trying to start his career like myself, trying to build wealth, if that would make a huge impact. And also too, like people think like capital gains, it's money going into the stock market and then it goes up. That is part of it. What about the guy that's giving $1 million to an entrepreneur trying to start a business? What about that? That guy, if there's a risk reward when you're going into a business, like if I have $1 million or $10 million or $500,000, if I'm going, let's say there's a guy, a dad or a friend or whatever, here's $500,000 for your startup. It's a big risk. There's a really good chance that $500,000 investment is going to go to zero. If the government is just going to take all the money that he's going to make off that risk, he's not going to make the investment in the first place. This is horrible for the economy.
They're only taking money if he makes money.
Yes.
If he loses, he gets to deduct that from his taxes.
Bro, I understand how deductions work.
Right.
If someone has $1 million, but
it offsets the risk.
No, Mike.
Yes, because
deductions offset the risk a little bit. If you have someone who wants to start a business, if you have $1 million, and let's say you're putting all your eggs into one basket, which a lot of the times is the case, there's nothing to deduct from. If you have a big, like a guy who's in real estate, again, $1 billion, a guy's a billionaire, yes, you're right. He can just deduct that off.
People are putting all their eggs in one basket? You think someone who's investing $1 million only has $1 million?
Bro, people start businesses. There are many, many, many people that start businesses that go all in. And you can't deny that fact.
The individual himself.
Yes, but if someone else is giving the money, it's a big risk. What about all my savings? Let's say, for example, I have $1 million saved up. I want to go start a business.
Yeah.
So you're telling me basically I have all this income tax. It's very difficult to make wealth because you can't get rich off of your income, off of your salary, because you're taxed into oblivion. You're taxed over 50%. Cost of living is out of control. The cost to buy a house is out of control. You can't make money that way. You have to make money off of owning something. If the government's just going to take all that away as well, what's the incentive to start a business?
To make money.
If the government's going to take 75% of it, what's the incentive to start a business?
Of your winnings.
If I start a business and everything is invested into this business, which for small businesses is usually the case,
yes.
What's the incentive?
Well, the government's actually not going to take anything until you make a profit.
That's the point of the risk. If the reward of my risk isn't high, I'm not going to take it.
I agree with you that the reward would be reduced.
And this is my last point, and I'll let you go.
Yeah.
What ends up happening is because, and you'll like this, I think, because there's less small and medium-sized businesses are the bedrock, or used to be the bedrock of Canada and North America. It's very important to have a healthy middle class and small and medium-sized businesses. All this does is basically discourage people from starting up their own business because it's too risky and the reward isn't high enough. And guess who ends up gathering more and more
gains?
But hold on. Guess who ends up gathering more and more of the resources? The big corporations.
But you don't make capital gains on a business.
Of course you do. If I want to sell my shares, of course it's a capital gain.
Yeah, but that's
I
the
go
whole
into
point.
a business.
It's an if you're going into a business to start a business for yourself, you're doing
you want to
that
cash out
to make you want to cash out eventually.
Yeah.
But you cashing out, who's going to buy your business?
I'll give you my example. If I work in insurance,
It's going to be a big company that buys your business.
Not always. But what does that have to do with whether or not, like, to start a business or not? It's like,
because you starting your business, when you start a business,
yes,
okay, and you're structuring it in shares, sure, okay? You start a business, you invest $100,000 into it.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that work essentially? So you start your business for many, many years, you're not profitable.
Mm-hmm.
You don't pay tax.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you don't pay capital gains.
I think you're getting mixed up between capital gains and corporate tax.
But I'm saying, yeah, of course. So you pay corporate tax, but
when you have a profit.
When you have a profit,
yes,
only.
Mm-hmm.
So that whole time, your $100,000, yeah, you're losing the opportunity cost, but that would have been there regardless.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to consider that.
Okay.
So your $100,000 stays the same until your business starts making a profit.
Yes.
And then you decide whether or not it'd be more beneficial for me to sell off my shares or to keep this business going.
Yes.
And get money that way.
But you're basically, okay, so are you going to deny the fact that people go into business to have an exit? You don't think people just want to get into a business to have an exit?
I don't think that's no. I think most of the time small and medium-sized businesses are started is so that they can create something.
Have a living?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
For them, for their kids. I don't think there's even an exit strategy at the beginning. I think that's very.
So, but
that's
do you agree with the fact?
That's a new phenomenon that started ever since the tech boom.
So your opinion? Okay, so I've given my answer. I thought I gave a good argument. So what's your opinion to if you want to increase the capital gains? It sounds like you agree with this.
So your point was, we want to attract foreign business so that we have...
Or direct. It's basically...
Whatever.
My point is this. It takes away the incentive for people to actually take the risk to start their own business. If there's no reward in the end to basically have a cash out...
There will be a reward, just a smaller one.
Well, the government's going to take 75% of it, so...
As opposed to 50, but yes.
Okay, but go ahead.
So...
Is it 50? I thought it was 25. Are you sure it's 50?
Yeah, it's 20... Isn't it 25?
It's 25, bro.
Yeah, it's
25.
50 of half.
Yeah, it's basically yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay. 75 seemed extreme.
But it's 75 of half.
Yes.
So 50 of half. Okay.
So now it'll be 75 of half. Yeah. Okay.
The inclusion rate has
so
gone
it's like
up.
it's going from it's like 20 is going from 25 to 37 and a half basically.
Probably.
Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
I don't know the math.
Cool. I'll let you make your point.
So you said more people paying tax. Attract foreign business to have more people paying tax. I want to throw you off your game. You said more people paying tax instead of people paying more tax.
I wasn't listening. Sorry.
So
start over.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So your point was attract foreign business to have more people paying tax
Correct.
instead of people paying more tax.
Correct. Yes.
Does that mean you're for immigrants coming here?
I am for immigrants coming here if we have the resources and infrastructure to take them in. Yes.
Okay. And how does one get the resources to take them in?
Good question. Yeah, that's
I'll
part
answer
of
my
it.
own
Yeah.
question.
Oh, sure.
So there you go. Okay. So I just wanted to see if I could get you to be
not
to
always
support
tax.
immigration.
Well,
which I
it's
just
like
did.
Curtis, just be careful. This guy's a lawyer, so he's
I never
leading
said-
you. He's
no,
leading you to where he
I
wants
never
you
said
to
I was
go.
against immigration.
screwing with him.
I never said I was against immigration.
No, but he's doing
Sales
something
tax.
here, so be careful.
Sales tax.
But hold on.
Yeah.
Tax isn't the only way to build infrastructure. That's not the only way that
How
we
else
get
do you do it?
revenue. There's like private investment all the time. People build roads. It's not all tax.
I don't want private companies dealing with infrastructure.
Well, they do. Government pays for it.
Yeah, of course.
The private companies build it.
Of course. I understand. But I don't want private companies supporting and, in the long run, our infrastructure.
So what role should
Yeah.
corporations have versus government?
I want to...
You want to finish that first point?
I want to mention sales tax.
Go for it.
Sales tax is interesting because it is a hidden tax on the poor. So we all pay the same amount of sales tax. And to a certain extent, we all need certain base necessities. We all need to purchase certain base necessities to live.
Cigarettes, beer.
Yeah, exactly.
Zins.
Exactly. So I need, as a human being that weighs 165 pounds, a certain amount of nutritional intake. If I was a billionaire, I would still only need that certain amount of food. So we are paying, the billionaire is paying the exact same amount on tax. I mean, that's a bad example because food isn't really subject to sales
No.
tax. I don't
No,
think.
it's not,
Okay,
no.
stupid example, but
Yeah.
whatever. Any
Point
other,
deduction.
anything
Close.
else, anything else,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
So I remember watching like a documentary where there was like the former CEO of Starbucks was basically saying that he has more money than he knows what to do with. He says, I only need, he's like, I can't buy or I won't buy more than 5 pairs of jeans. You don't need more than that. So all the other money is going nowhere. Whereas if he distributed that money, or if that money was taken in tax and obviously through social programs redistributed, all of that money would go to multiple million people who would all buy 1 pair of jeans. So the fact that the wealth gap is increasing and wealth is being concentrated at the top makes it so that the money does not circulate in our economy. And that is the essence of our economy, that money moves. If money stops moving, capitalism fails. Because as we said, we can never repay off our debt. The whole principle of our system is that it moves.
Yeah.
So when it's concentrated, it doesn't move. It doesn't go into purchasing. And so what happens at the end of the day?
It does. Like they don't. These guys don't just keep cash. They keep their money in stocks and businesses, philanthropy. Like a lot of these guys, it's not just
and you assume,
sitting in a
correct.
piggy bank.
And you assume that the money that's in stocks are being used by the business to then produce things that they sell and hire people.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
If the business instead decides to buy back 50% of their shares,
Okay.
that does not happen. There's no productivity. It is a movement of money that just creates wealth for the billionaires. Now, back to sales tax, and essentially the point I'm trying to make is that sales tax affects the have-nots much more than the haves, because everything they purchase, all the necessities they purchase are subject to the same sales tax as all the necessities someone else purchases. And yes, a billionaire is going to buy more luxury purchases than someone who doesn't have that money. But the scale is still off. So I personally think that they should pay more sales tax. And I think that if like we do already, with certain essentials, you don't have sales tax. And with certain luxury goods, you do. And the only people
But at what point is it too much? Because I just want to go back to this main thing.
At what point it's too much is when you have enough
sorry,
to make your base.
That wasn't my question. It's at what point is it too much with regards to taxation of the population? Like all this, all Canadians do. Like, how come there's never a solution put forward in Canada where it's not just more tax, more regulation, more permits, more this, more that? It doesn't stop,
because tax
that's
is the
all
only
they do.
way you support your system.
I understand that tax revenues, though.
Yeah.
So, but there are ways, if you spur economic growth and you spur like the point, and we agreed on this earlier.
Why don't we do both?
I would love to do both, but what I'm saying is, in my opinion, right now, and it's showing in the numbers, like with productivity, I sound like a broken record. If the Liberal Party just keeps coming up and imposing a new, you basically, right? Productivity is like, how much does it take to produce $1 of goods? How much does it take to produce that dollar?
Okay, so we're inefficient is basically
we're inefficient,
okay.
And you could be inefficient from things like. Perhaps there's too much debt to go produce that $1 of goods.
Okay, yeah.
Just
so
stuff
the interest
like that.
rate is lost.
That's
to
one of them.
inefficiency.
How many people, and like, is there bureaucracy? Is there a lot of red tape? So for example, like in real estate, this could be a nice segue. So let's just look at real estate in Canada. The permitting process to just build like a regular house in Vancouver, it's going to take you over a year just to get the permit. That's ridiculous.
Okay, but is that as compared to other countries? Is it?
We're like the worst in the developed world. The worst.
Now
and that there. So these are little. I'm not saying that we just fire all the government. How do
you know we're worst in the developed world?
I was looking up the stats on all this stuff. Like, we have a housing crisis in Canada. We do. And if you want to jump into
touch on that, I just want to kind of put an end cap on what we just said.
Yeah.
So, because it's last episode that Khoury was on and this one,
Yeah.
the point that he was putting across was that the only way to pay down debt is taxes, right? So I think the important thing that we need to understand is if the government is taxing more,
Yes.
arguably the consumer and the populace would be worse off monetarily on a personal level. What's important to remember is the government using those funds appropriately and efficiently?
They're never using it efficiently, but it's just the main point, I think more importantly, is just you get to a point where people go, enough's enough, I'm out of here. And then you lose people to pay the tax. And that's what's happening in Canada.
Okay.
So I get your point. Hey, if you're worth $20 billion, you should be paying this tax. Okay, that's fine. But you keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing to the point where Canadians just go, I'm fucking out of here, man. Enough's enough.
So kind of just keeping with what we've been talking about, do you think that Canada, and feel free to talk about Quebec if you'd like, are net importers or exporters of talent among young professionals? And so, just by that, what I mean is, are people leaving our province and our country to go work abroad because conditions are better for them there? Or are we attracting all this talent to come and work for Canada or Quebec? So I'll just leave that one. Mikey, you could start this one.
Maybe I'll ask you for precision.
In what way?
Like, kind of.
What are the numbers? Because I don't even know what they are.
Well, I'm asking what your perception is based
perception.
on what
my perception would be that we have a
do you think
very
that people
world-renowned education system and universities. So it would not surprise me if Canadians were being poached to go work elsewhere more than people are coming here to work. The problem with that is that the results are skewed in the sense that when you're talking about young professional talent, you're talking about people that are going to be making a certain amount of money. Where would those people...
We could even talk about entrepreneurs if you'd like, startups.
Either way, where would those people tend to go? And obviously they're going to decide to go work in a place where they're taxed less. But that kind of like skews the whole purpose, in that you should measure a country based upon its talent, not based upon the ability to attract talent necessarily. And what I'm saying by that, what I mean by that is if Canada, as a function of its population, is exporting more young talent than, let's say, the United States is exporting on
Per
capita or whatever, that is a testament to the strength and the health of the system that produced that talent. Do you know what I mean? So, do you see what I'm getting at?
I completely understand what you're saying.
And I'm sure that I don't know the numbers, and I'm sure if we knew them, we could predict that I think they're definitely leaving. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think they're definitely. First of all, it'd be very difficult to calculate. It can't just be like net inflows and outflows, because like, who are the people leaving?
A ton of Americans come here to go to school because they can't afford.
It goes both ways. Yeah. So my perception is the same as Mike's. So we kind of agree on this again. Next question.
Yeah.
Well then,
I think they leave. I think I'll just say
it's just a function of the fact that if people, and again you brought it up, but if taxes are going up across the board, then
it's not an attractive place to invest.
It's not an attractive
and like
place
I'll
to
just give
invest.
like a little example, and I'm sure you're seeing this as well. So they had, I don't know who, but someone on the government, maybe it's Chrysler Freeland, they were putting pressure on pension funds to invest more in the TSX, more in Canadian companies. There's 1,500 companies in Canada, and the pensioners are going, well, I have a duty to the people that I'm holding their money for. So people, that could be Canadians, that could be private companies. You have to manage your money, and when you're managing someone's money, it's your duty to go
maximize.
Yes, exactly. And so they're saying, well, why would we invest in companies like the TSX when we can invest in the S&P, for example, which has been outperforming the TSX for, you know better than I would, for how long? Decades, especially and particularly now. So just things like this, I think, again, just comes back to the same point. We have it's not my opinion, we have a productivity issue in Canada. I think it's because there's too much red tape. It's a bad investment environment. The taxes are too high. It makes it a place that other companies don't want to come to. It's all fine and dandy to want to live this socialist life where there's dandelions everywhere and rainbows and everyone's happy and there's no fighting. That's great, but we need to pay for this somehow. If we keep scaring away businesses and foreign investment, eventually we're going to have to pay the piper, and eventually the money runs out.
And therein lies the problem.
And he's going to say we should just tax the corporations.
Is the
more.
is the profit motive? Now, you're saying, okay, as a hedge fund manager, as a pension fund manager, you have the obligation to maximize profit for your constituents, and that's all.
What about people? What about Canadian citizens? We have pensions too. The government gives us the money, but that money is invested, but it's managed by like a PSP. It's managed by these companies, right?
Yeah.
So this isn't just rich people. These are Canadians, so that are taking their retirement, and then the government gives them the money back. So that money there, but so it would be irresponsible and not logical for the people managing the money to get less of a return and invest in the TSX. Like, you're smirking.
Mike not because he's not going to like my answer.
Let's hear it.
I would like to hear your opinion.
So the difference,
as well,
can you tell
me
out of approximately, I'm not expecting exact numbers, how much the S&P outperforms the TSX?
I don't know.
I could get the data.
No, but throw out a number.
I know on
reasonable.
average the S&P since like 100 years or more, it's returned on average about 10% per year.
Okay, and the TSX?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't have those.
I know it's.
What would you say?
A significant amount.
Yeah, but what's a significant amount? A couple percent?
No, I'd say more than that.
Well, if the S&P's returned 10
over the past 100 years, it would be TSX.
The TSX
7,
is not. It's
8,
not 2.
No.
Yeah.
But go for it. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, how much money do you think that pension fund is paying PSP to manage their account?
I have no idea.
Probably more than the difference
in terms of fees
between S&P and TSX.
No.
Yes.
No.
It's a
Michael.
fact.
No. First, no. That's ridiculous.
No, it's a fact. Do you know how much money?
Do you know how many?
And how many?
This is
fees?
Trillions, and I understand that. But what I'm just saying, so let's just take PSP, take their whole entire payroll. Okay, it's not even going to be worth close to as much as like an Apple or a Google. Or first of all, I have no idea what PSP's payroll is. Bro, that's the most ludicrous statement I've ever heard.
And he's gonna try and back up his data.
Yeah. Do you wanna go on to something? Kind of change gears here?
Yeah. I want to just switch gears slightly.
Yeah.
What are you looking at there? You got it. You got the data you need.
He's going to pull up some CEO executive who made $6 million and say, aha, you see,
we kind of spoke a little bit now. You guys brought up the TSX and whatnot, and maybe we spoke about corporations here in Canada. So I'll throw out a couple more numbers. We're going to just change gears a little bit towards real estate.
Oh, I like this.
Yeah. Specifically here in Canada.
Yeah.
So the real estate sector accounts for over 20% of the Canadian GDP. Mm-hmm. Okay, when we're talking about it as a whole. Mm-hmm. You got that, Mike?
What?
I said we're going to switch gears a little bit.
Okay, forget it.
So, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it.
Their PSP is a private company and does not share those numbers,
no.
Obviously.
Well, yeah, no private company does. But
yeah. So, listen to these numbers,
So, when you
Mikey.
invest with Fidelity, you're paying about between 3 and 7% of your portfolio
we're switching gears.
in fees per year.
I have no idea.
Well,
so
that's extremely high. If someone's paying that type of fees, that's ludicrous.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Okay, but
I mean, I would never.
As an example.
Yeah, but that's high.
Usually
they're gouging you if that's the case.
2% management, 20% of the profit, or it could be a 1 in 20.
Perfect. That's the difference between the S&P and the TSX.
Okay, so
sure. Okay.
Nice. Real estate sector here in Canada.
Yeah.
It accounts for over 20% of the Canadian GDP, and just to give you some concrete numbers. It's about $270 billion. Uh-huh. The next highest is oil and gas, which you would assume is more, but only it's only 160 billion. So the oil and gas industry is 160 billion. Financials and insurance, the one that you're familiar with, is 150 billion. So real estate far outweighs some of our...
Real estate's 270, you said?
270 billion dollars in real estate. So I kind of want to hear, and you guys touched on this the last time Mike was on, but how reliant, obviously we know significantly reliant the Canadian government is on real estate. Good, bad, pros, cons, and what's our way out? Because a bubble seems to be forming, and I just want to know your opinion on that.
My opinion is that that's a problem. It's a problem created by globalization, and it's a problem, and globalization is a result of giant companies trying to maximize their profits by offshoring all their production. So you, as an example, and I'll use this, my father's business used to have a factory here, used to employ a couple hundred people. It became financially impossible to do that and still make a profit. So now everything's purchased from other countries where the stuff is produced. So we used to have a booming manufacturing manufacturing industry in Canada. I guess that's the word.
Montreal in particular.
Yeah. And
I didn't know this. Just a quick little fun fact.
Yeah.
Like Montreal, I had a Souk guy on last week. He's like back in the day for Mills.
Yeah.
So he
he's
goes
the best.
for
Shout out to Mills.
Yeah, shout out to Millsy. He said that having the made in Montreal or made in Canada, he's like it was the equivalent of like being made in Italy like 40 years ago when the textile boom in
it's
Chamonix.
probably so rare.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
sorry.
And it's a problem. So it concentrates your economy into a couple of sectors that are, I mean, it's just the same principle as diversifying your investments. One sector something bad can happen, and then it tanks your economy because each one is so valuable and makes up such a large percentage. So I totally think that that's a problem, but I believe that where me and Curtis differ is what caused that concentration.
And that was my thing. I was going to say, I'm pretty sure Curtis can agree with you.
So I'm
going to
have him give me his opinion,
but as to what caused it,
I'll dismantle it afterwards.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So nobody's going to disagree with the fact
Right.
that we have a housing issue here in Canada.
Yeah.
Nobody is going to dispute that. And I agree with Mike. It's a massive problem when $270 billion or 20%, I thought it was a little bit higher than that with regards to the percentage of GDP of Canada, but we'll take 20%. When
It's the only thing you can't offshore, right? Like
yeah.
stuff that you have here, like oil.
But it's bad when you get when it's that high. It's a non-productive asset. It doesn't actually give anything. Yes, people can live there, but it's like houses should be.
It's not something new that you're making.
Yes,
It's always going to be there.
Yes,
a
house
you don't
should
have
be
to
looked at.
sacrifice the housing industry to make another industry bigger. The housing industry is going to stay as big as it is, regardless.
But we have to look at I wish in Canada we would look at housing as what it's supposed to be, housing as opposed to a speculative asset, which is kind of what it's used as today. So we both agree there.
Wow, I did not see that comment
well,
coming.
it is. So
yeah, you're right. But you're right.
What I
It
think
should not be a speculative asset.
what I think the big issue is, and number one, and I mean it's clearly, and the Bank of Canada has said this as well. It's not an interest rate issue because they put interest rates up. It hasn't changed the housing market at all. It's more or less stagnant.
At all? Really?
It's like stagnant across Canada. In some areas,
Sales are going down. Like the
no,
amount
no.
of transactions.
Transactions are way down.
Okay.
But the prices have not are the same.
Have not followed.
Exactly.
What explains that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Well, this
it makes no
this
sense.
is my theory. If you keep bringing in 1 million immigrants a year, that's going to keep up the supply is going to remain constrained.
Okay.
I always have to put my disclaimer. I'm not against immigration, but if you have this many immigrants coming in, you need to be building. People aren't building. Why are people not building? It's too expensive to build. And you made a comment last time where you say you should force developers to go build. That's ridiculous. Unless you want to be like the Tsar of Canada, or you could be our new housing minister and just call up our buddies and say, you need to build this today. And the buddy, your buddy's going to go,
the developers make a little less profit.
Anyways,
God
so
forbid.
it's clearly a supply issue. Interest rates didn't put a dent in the cost of housing. The cost of rents are out of control. They've doubled. And this is where I'm going to kind of shit on the Liberal government. They knew this was going to happen if you're bringing in this many immigrants every single year to basically paper over GDP. GDP per capita has been falling for basically it's the same since 2017. And again, I go back to the productivity issue. We need to improve productivity. But we need to start building more houses. And how do we build more houses? We have to incentivize developers to build more houses, and we have to cool it on this many people coming into our country.
Okay, so let's say I want to just run with that.
In a nutshell, just my last point. Just like in a nutshell, it's so obvious. And again, the Bank of Canada is saying this. Our housing issue, it's a supply issue. So you either build more housing, which isn't happening, or you stop bringing in this many people.
Fine. Okay. Now, the reason why we have so many people that are trying to come here is because of Trump.
No.
Yes.
A lot of people are from India, bro. Like 25 or 30% of people are from India. That has nothing to do with Trump.
Okay.
And most of the people coming to our country aren't American.
No, of course they're not.
So what does that have to do with Trump?
Because Trump basically cut down illegally on the amount of immigrants that the United States accepts. So what people do, and this I know firsthand, so this can't be debated. What they do is right now, our immigrants, or a large portion of them, you heard all about this, about Roxham Road on the news and how many people are coming in illegally and asking for asylum.
Yep.
That's happening because Trump is refusing them. So they are crossing.
Biden is the current president.
Yeah,
no,
but
I
Biden,
understand, but because he was, and
open
Biden
policy right now.
Okay. So Trump instilled these things, and now it's too politically unpopular for Biden to reverse it. So the same
reverse
immigration,
illegal immigration.
it's not illegal immigration. All of it is coming in through asylum seekers.
Okay, are we on this topic now, or are we staying on the Canadian real estate topic?
But what I'm saying, yeah, but the Canadian real estate topic is one thing.
Are you trying to correlate the Canadian real estate market to?
No, but I mean indirectly, because we're saying we're taking in. You're saying we're taking in too many immigrants. What's happening is that people are coming. There's this policy in the Geneva Convention of the first place you land is where you ask for asylum. Mm-hmm. Starting with Trump, the states started saying, I don't give a shit about that. Mm-hmm. And so people from the Caribbean and South America were going to the States, making their way up to New York, and crossing into Canada.
Okay.
And asking for asylum.
Okay.
The reason that is happening is because they cannot do so in the States, because they have such a backup and because they're refusing everyone. So
there was like 10 million, there was over 10 million illegal immigrants that came into the U.S. last year.
I understand, but if you look at the historical figures.
So you're basically trying to say that because people aren't staying in the U.S.
because instead of going to the States, they're coming here.
Indirectly causing our housing.
Well, it's indirectly increasing the amount of immigrants that are coming to Canada.
Okay, that's fine, but so what do we do about the housing market?
Okay, well that's something I don't know the answer to.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know.
My answer would be either
I gave you my answer. It's to make real estate developers do what they do, and instead of maximizing their profit, taking a little less for the benefit of society.
This is like where the issue comes in.
Market.
Instead of you got to make them do that. Why can't the government switch its brain and go, let's incentivize them to do this?
No. Why do we have to pay people to do something that's good for society and the market?
Because we live in a free country, and you can't have the government go on top of you and say, I'm forcing you to do this, and if you're going to lose money on this job, too bad, you got to do it.
Not lose money.
Michael,
make a little bit less money than you normally would.
If there was a profit to be made in building housing for people in Canada, the developers would be doing it at a much quicker rate. When you have the cost as outrageous as it is right now, and 33% of a unit to build is taxes in one way or another, and it takes over a year to get the permitting process done, it's very difficult to build quickly in Canada. There's no debate about that.
Are you saying that developers are losing money?
I'm not saying they're losing money. What I'm saying is it would be very easy to incentivize developers to build more affordable housing.
Of course. Where do you get the money to incentivize them?
You charge less tax.
Excuse me?
I said you charge
So
less
the government
tax.
has
Take
to-
off
okay.
the GST, which they already did.
So the government has
which,
to...
by the way, which they did, trying to incentivize it, didn't put a dent. They took off the GST. Okay. So when you're gonna go, the government will never do that. Tax.
No,
We
I
need
didn't
our
say
tax.
the government will never do that. What I said is you're basically, so what you're saying we do is give the real estate developers more money.
No.
Yes.
No.
But that's what
I'm not saying
incentivizing
give them
is,
more.
Curtis.
I'm saying to make the project, if
An incentive is more money.
fair. If I have to choose between project A that's going to make me 30% and project B that's going to make me 20%, I am always going to go to the 30%. The government has to make the game where it's 30% here, and if it's housing for people to live in, 30% here. That's just the way the market works, Mike.
So where is the government going to get that money?
I'm not what money?
The money to incentivize.
And what do you have to get money for? You're just making less income on the taxes. Cut your fucking tax rate.
Okay. So this is like this fallacy here. So
But this is how the economy works, bro.
Incentivizing people, the government collecting less tax is the same thing as the government paying them.
Well, you could print
It
more
is.
money, which in the short term would lead to more inflation. But I am pro printing money if it leads to infrastructure, right? If the government of Canada has to print more money, at least if that money is going towards the infrastructure, like look at Quebec, for example. Right now, we're going to have a huge energy crisis, right? The infrastructure from Hydro-Quebec has been like next to none over the last 20 years. And there's going to be a huge energy crisis.
We're gonna have like more and more pan d'électricité, I guess.
It's going to be like that because infrastructure wasn't built, right?
Yeah.
There was not enough. And so I am for, I guess I'm kind of in between both of you because
But why would we? So let me go on that. So when you print money, inflation goes up, right? And if you're saying that to maintain our basic necessities, we need to print money, presumably because we don't have enough of it.
well, no, if you're not going to tax I'm saying the alternative to taxing more is printing the money.
But when you
that just creates
but when you
long-term-
tax,
that doesn't solve anything.
I'm just
When
giving,
you tax-
I'm giving a devil's advocate.
when you
here.
tax, you're taxing people that can afford to pay it. When you're printing money, you're increasing inflation for the entire population. So instead of just the ones who can afford to pay it paying it, everyone has to pay it. That is an indirect tax on the poor.
Simple. It's so simple. And if we had leaders to actually just do it, if you have, like I said, it's in the free market and developers, it's a free market in Canada. There's no czar that's forcing people to build. If they can make as good of a return on building apartment houses as they would on an industrial project, they're going to do it. It's so simple. Just incentivize
And
them.
that's a problem.
How is that?
Because
This is
then
where-
you don't
but this
get
is where you-
because then you
this is
don't
where
get
you
your
lose me.
infrastructure built.
The government needs to incentivize them. You can't force
Meaning
them.
they need to give them money.
I don't care how they do it. They just need to figure it out. It's not difficult. So,
Where
however,
is the money going to come from
I have
for them
no
to
idea.
incentivize
Tell them to
them?
cut their spending. They're spending like drunken sailors. How about that? What a concept. How about we cut spending?
Okay.
What
This
a
goes
concept,
back, I'm
eh?
gonna bring this back to you and your business, okay? And I've made this point with you before.
Get a little spicy here,
but it
okay?
seems
Come on.
like you ain't hammering it in.
Yeah.
It's not getting in there. You have created a business very successfully because you're a bright entrepreneur.
Thank you.
He doesn't mean that.
I do.
Thank you.
But
you.
wait
Yeah,
for it. It's coming.
Yeah. Like, he always
You
leaves me a
are-
message. I'll just say this. Whenever he leaves me a message, he goes, "Hey, redneck," and he just leaves.
You are not Albert Einstein.
No.
Is that fair?
Yeah, of course.
There are a lot of people, and just like me and just like Mike, in the world that have the same amount of talent that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Your business was successful because of two things.
Mm-hmm.
You and your employees and the economic and social environment in which the business was started.
Mm-hmm.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
You are a product, just as you're a product of your environment psychologically, emotionally, physically. A business is a product of the environment in which it grows.
Like I would be making, we'd be far less successful in Congo.
That's
Example.
correct.
Yes.
That's what I mean.
Yes, I understand.
So
Yeah.
our developers here
Yeah.
have been able to amass the amount of money they have because of what our taxes pay for. So a company, let's say FedEx.
This is so
okay?
idealistic.
No, FedEx is successful in I'm pretty sure FedEx has no presence in the Congo.
Probably
and
not.
the profit that they make is
Probably not.
probably quite low. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah.
How is FedEx so successful? Well, they benefit from infrastructure that was paid for
Yeah.
by taxes.
Yeah. And they pay tax too.
Correct. They would not be as successful in another place.
I don't understand your point. So
My point is that all the money that has gone into creating the economic system, building the roads,
Yeah.
the bridges, everything that goes along with being in a developed country
Yeah.
is what allows these businesses to profit as much as they do. So when you
I should
ask
be paying
them
more tax than what I'm paying. That's what you're saying?
No, not
because I've been
hang
gifted.
on,
Okay,
hang
go
on.
on. Yeah.
What I'm saying is that you coming and saying that it is unfair how much I'm not saying you're saying this. This is a general example. You coming in and saying it is unfair how much tax I pay is bullshit, because the reason you are able to do what, and I'm saying you, I don't mean you in particular, is because of the taxes that everybody pays. Because if they didn't, you wouldn't have had a successful business.
Mm-hmm.
It's as simple as that. And so for the businesses to say, I ain't doing shit to support the society in which allowed me to be what I am, is insane. I understand that it's the free market, but telling a business that you build something to support the structure that allowed you to succeed is not only going to benefit individuals and society in general, indirectly and eventually it's going to benefit you as well.
But this is when,
and that's why they
things,
say that every
things
dollar
things start to break when you have government directing capital.
Who else is going to direct it?
The free market. Yes, there are inefficiencies in the free market, absolutely. But when you have the government trying to direct and steer where capital is going to go, this is where things get really ugly, and it's just not efficient.
A corporation directing where money goes is way more dangerous than a government directing where money goes, because remember, the government does not have that profit motive, that maximizing profit motive.
So you want our government managing our money?
No. I don't mean managing our money in general. I mean managing our tax dollars.
I just want to end that on just by saying that, I personally am a capitalist and I believe in the free market. And
yeah, you would.
Yeah, obviously. But I think the government has a big role to play in basic necessities, education, real estate, and healthcare, right? These are the three main roles I think that the government should have their hands in. Everything else, if a corporation doesn't want to build something, that's what separates us from a lot of dictatorships and communism. And do I agree with it? No. But I feel like it's an important thing to remember that it is, unfortunately or fortunately, their choice. And that's the market.
Can we talk about I want to talk about the U.S. election.
Yeah, I was just going to switch
get
gears. I want to hear a little bit about the U.S.
I'd love to hear your opinion on what's coming up.
So
honestly, I think it's just a fucking shit show. And
Are you
I
excited to see the debate?
I'm
I don't think there'll be a
excited as
debate.
hell. I am excited as hell.
How good is that? Well, if there is a debate, I don't think they'll let Biden debate if he's the nominee.
I don't think they'll
Which
let him
is-
debate
I don't
either,
think so either,
because
but-
he can't speak.
So
Like,
then,
it's, but
yeah, let me
they-
start with this.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
go.
What do you think about the fact that both Biden and Trump are the two oldest running candidates?
I'm
ridiculous.
gonna put a spin on that because I just like they're old. They should not be in politics. They're not gonna have to.
Should it be
bear
based
the
on age,
consequences.
or should it be
I think
based
you
on
shouldn't be- I
cognitive
think you
ability?
just like judges have to retire at a certain age, I think politicians should have to retire at a
What's
certain
the
age.
age of retirement for judges? Because I thought
think it's, I think it's
justices,
70.
there's like 90-year-old
Interesting. Huh.
justices.
I think it's. I could be wrong.
But they'll never pass a law that does that. So it's
I know,
like
but it's crazy
Yeah.
that like like. Okay, so my plan when I get too old is to do a bunch of drugs until I die. Do you know why? Because I have nothing to lose and won't have to suffer the consequences.
If I'm a vegetable, I'm gonna be on morphine all day.
That's
like,
do you see what I'm saying? So
yeah.
how could you leave the responsibility to someone who's not going to have to deal with the repercussions of their actions?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
crazy. Now, they're both fucking old.
Yeah.
Trump is literally insane.
Yeah.
Biden, I'm convinced there's like a wooden board puppeted by someone backstage. Like,
Do you?
but yeah, the State of the Union, I was like, dude, this guy can talk.
Do you think
He was
they
actually
must have
do you
talking.
think they
pumped him
give him
with
like
steroids.
They must give him
They-
Adderall.
They must have
Or
I
pumped him
thought he
before
was
he
on
goes out.
cocaine for the State of the
It's
Union.
blow or Adderall or something.
Yeah, because I'm like, he like sometimes you're like, what are they doing? Why won't he speak? And then at the State of the Union, they just threw him out there
Yeah.
and told him go for it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
something's. So why is he not always like that?
I'm convinced it's Adderall. It's got to be.
It's got to be something.
I guess we could all agree that both are too old, and that's we're going to agree
Both
on. So let me
suck
say
as
this.
well.
Yeah.
Let me ask this then. Do you think that currently in the States it's a two-party system? One, do you think there should be some reform to maybe a three-party
Yes, that's
system like here in Canada?
I'll agree with
There
that
should
too,
be as
yeah.
many parties
I would agree with that
as
too.
possible. The more parties, the better.
I would agree with that too. Yeah.
I think that the U.S. political system is a joke.
And I honestly though, but I want to add on to that, and I think that's going to change as legacy media gets less and less relevant over time. And this is not just Canadian, the CBC, in America as well, like CNN, Fox, MSNBC, ABC. The rise of podcast interviews and long form content, it's gaining a lot of traction. And so the point I'm just trying to make is, as legacy media loses its influence on society, I think that's going to open up the possibility for new parties to actually that have a bit of money and some support behind them to actually make a difference. Because right now, I feel like they're so intertwined. So like a CNN, I'll just take the example.
But that's the States, right? Like,
Well, you could say the same thing here.
I don't
I just want
know.
to finish my point.
Yeah,
It's
go
just-
ahead.
So it's like
keep it in the
CBC's,
States.
yeah, CBC. We'll focus
it
on
in-
states.
yeah,
So you
it's-
have CNN with the Democratic Party. Everyone knows that. Fox with the Republican Party. They're never gonna really support. They're never gonna put the machine behind a candidate that isn't part of
no,
that
they
party.
won't. Yeah.
And so what I think is over time, like for us, I don't watch legacy news. You probably don't. You don't. I know Shamar doesn't. So it's like, as it loses its relevance, this could be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. I think that is when we'll see a new party. And until then, I don't think we'll see it.
So you think that there will not be a third? You could go ahead and answer
Yeah.
that.
I think it's too difficult, and the establishment has too much power, too much influence. The whole machine, is like, if the machine wants this person to get elected, there's a really good chance that they're going to get elected. Like right now, and I completely agree with Mike, a two-party system and a three-party system here in Canada, or well, technically two, because NDP is never going to win. But it's not. Sorry, I keep going back to Canada.
that's
But
fine.
for the U.S.,
Do-
it's like
do you?
it's not whether you elect a Democrat or a Republican. It's pretty much the same. Nothing's
Yes.
really going to
Yeah,
change.
Exactly. Like when you think about it, like, and I'm not going to harp on this, but like, what actually changed under Trump that was so like for
Not
like
much.
that exactly
Yeah.
like what did he do that differently than Bush before him or Obama before him? Nothing.
I think it's all
really.
optics. It's just what
Yes,
the image is
exactly.
portrayed to the
But-
world.
Would you agree with this though? That it's not so much left versus right,
Yeah, because
but it's more. What do you think about this? It's more rural versus urban.
Yeah, for sure. The Democrats pander to to the left, but they're not really left. They say in what they say they're left,
Yeah.
but what they're actually doing is not left.
No.
Like, so they'll say, we wanna have one bathroom in schools, but that's so irrelevant to when you look at a nation and how it affects the population. It makes no difference.
Yeah. That's why whenever they bring up, like, I'll just say it, and I'm not going to offer
yourself,
my opinion.
right, from certain people.
Well, you alienate yourself from certain people, but their goal is to bring themselves closer to other people. That's why they do things like that. That's why they pander to
I never understand all this trans stuff, and I'm not going to take an opinion. Honestly, I don't care at all. I don't understand why it's such a big thing is for something that affects such a small percentage of the population. Whether it's right, like I really do not have an opinion. Whenever it comes up, I tune out. I don't care. It's like if you want to cut your dick off or whatever, I go for it. I don't fucking care.
Okay, so the point that I was going to make is that it's the reason why, like, I don't think legacy media is actually the problem, and the reason why I'm going to say that is because it can be done right. Like, if you watch CNN, it's crazy. Like, the host has a bachelor's degree in journalism is going to tell you about a story and then tell you his opinion on the story. It's weird, and that's all they do on CNN and Fox News. In obviously two different opinions, but all they do, like when you see, like he's not on anymore, but like Tucker Carlson or whatever, all he's doing, he's not telling you what happened. He's telling you how to think about what happened.
Yeah.
Same thing goes for CNN.
Yeah.
And then when you watch like CTV, and like sometimes when I'm at home at 6 o'clock, I'll watch CTV News, and there's that lady, Mitsumi Takahashi, and she literally...
I thought she was CF12.
She literally... No, she's CTV. She literally just tells you...
Mike at home sitting on his couch just watching Mitsumi Takahashi.
I love how he knows her name.
No, but it's memorable. She literally just tells you what happened. You don't see her being like... giving a speech afterwards.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know whether she is a liberal or a conservative. I have no idea.
Well, Canadian
because
news
she's literally
outlets.
the news is meant not to give you a spin on something, but to tell you what happened and to allow you to form your own opinion.
So do you think that CBC is not biased?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that, because you can be biased in many ways other than the host saying what she believes. You can be biased in the stories you choose to cover, and they are. Every news organization covers crime because it's going to make them more money and make for more viewers. That is an inherent bias that's produced by the system, where it makes you think that crime is on such a rise when actually it's going down.
So do you think, though, that like how do we get to it like a 3 or 4 or 5 party system?
I have no idea. All I know is how to comment on how shitty it is now, because the U.S. political system is an absolute joke. It's a puppet show.
Yeah.
Nobody.
And you need so much money to start. Like the fact that you need to be a billionaire to kind of get in, or you need to be blessed by the party.
Yeah.
It's kind of.
And
crazy.
what's funny is that it doesn't seem like that actually would influence anything, because in Canada there's huge limits on spending for campaigns, and yet we still only have 2 parties.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So what is the solution to that? I have no idea.
I really think it's media. I think as legacy media dies,
they choose to cover certain ones and not others.
And they push that. So, but I really think like our generation, as like we're all online and we're all not listening to CBC anymore. I don't think CBC will be around, or at least not in its current form, in 20 years.
It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, though, because when you have 2 main parties, then you have a candidate who's great. He comes up and he's great. If he wants to win, he's going to go with one of the 2.
Of course.
So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy that the 2-party system
I see what
creates.
Yeah.
And
it's like a talented politician like an Obama. Like he's not going to go. He's not going to be an independent.
Exactly.
He's going to go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's why when you expand the NHL, you have to have a lottery draft or whatever it's called to even the stakes.
Yeah.
Because or else it's going to take the team forever to get better. So, and that's kind of the problem.
I just think that change has to start somewhere, and
Yeah.
voters need to realize that
Yeah.
they wield more power than they think. And
What's
so
your
if,
opinion on RFK? No, sorry,
No,
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 because
no,
it's
no, no.
talking about
Who's
this. Like,
RFK?
changes
yeah,
have,
because
like,
all I
on
was going to
RFK,
say,
yeah.
all I was going to say on that is
What's
that
RFK?
Robert F. Robert F.
is
Kennedy.
the independent. So all I was going to say on that is that you show up to the voting booth and people are scared that if they don't vote for one of the two-party systems, it throws away their vote, right? People are saying, if I don't vote Biden, if I vote independent, it's a vote for Trump, basically, right? So what I'm saying is, though, is that change begins somewhere, and you just have to keep mounting on that. If everybody like would say we do not want either one of these candidates and vote for the third-party independent, he would
Just the
gain
people
traction.
that don't vote voted
well, that's a
for
whole other-
someone else.
That's a whole other issue.
That's another way
Voter
to address the
turnout,
problem.
electoral system, it's all
that's why in red states they're trying to dissuade you from voting as much as possible, because they know that they're backwards. They know that their stance on abortion and stuff like that is backwards, and so they know that the majority of the population does not support that. So they know that if the majority of the population if everybody turns out to vote, they're going to lose. Just as a matter of that one issue.
I think that's just a small fraction
It is,
of the
of course
party.
it is.
Because like
Of course
the
it
other,
is.
they're politicians at the end of the day.
Yes.
Do they really care? They want to win.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of Republicans that are also very aware of the fact that if it's a zero tolerance policy on abortion, that they're not going to win, and
Yeah.
they're aware of that. So,
Yeah.
but they're to my understanding, like DeSantis, for example, I think he's at like 8 weeks or something for abortion. So it's not like.
Yeah, that's 8 weeks.
And again, that's another thing for abortion. I don't even follow it. I'm just like, oh, because it's so annoying to just have the same fucking thing over and over and over.
understand.
It's
I
like
understand.
abortion, and you always got to bring up abortion in
Yeah.
an issue, and you're just like, oh my god.
What the problem in the States is it doesn't matter who you vote for, things are going to stay the same.
Yeah.
That's at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that's why, and I think it's a huge mistake by the Democrats to run Joe Biden, because
Who else are they gonna run though? Like Gavin Newsom?
I don't know. Honestly, I
Yeah.
don't know the answer to that question. It's just
I think anybody would have been better than Biden, but that's,
Yeah,
they-
I think what's happening. I think a lot of like traditional Democratic voters, they're okay with, well, number one, they don't want Trump,
yeah.
and number two,
If
they're okay with the Democratic machine. I mean, Biden's clearly not calling the shots now, anyways.
No, exactly.
So I think they're like,
that's
well,
why the
I'd
Democrats
rather
probably
just
wanted
have the
them.
machine
Yeah.
make the decisions, and they know what they're getting.
I think the Republicans are also making a mistake putting Trump, because I think that, and if you get a Republican that's less,
But it wasn't the party pushing him. Like the voters.
he hasn't even
want
been
Trump.
showing up to debates, and
No,
he's winning them.
I
It's
get it.
wild.
But,
Yeah.
but think about if
wild.
think about
But
if the
I
Republicans
haven't-
ran a candidate that was
They
not
tried with
so
DeSantis.
ridiculous.
They tried
yeah,
with
but
DeSantis.
DeSantis is also ridiculous.
But
Like,
this is what
so
this
if
is
they-
what you say about every Republican nominee.
No, absolutely not. I did not say the same things about Republican nominees 10 years ago. I didn't. Now it's gotten, Republicans are in like a race to supreme idiocy. Like they literally are. Like DeSantis, if DeSantis ran 15 years ago, we would have been like, oh my God, this guy's a fucking clown. Like compare him to George Bush, who's actually an idiot. We thought George
I really
Bush,
like George Bush. I
But
think
like,
he's
I
a
mean,
likable
you
guy.
go
Yeah,
back
but
in
that's-
time, you're like,
that's
wow, he
the
was
point.
actually.
He's so-
I bet you anything if we played golf with him, I'd be like,
Think
I
about
like this guy.
Think about
You ever,
John
you ever
McCain.
see that meme where he's like, "Now watch me hit this drive"?
Yeah, it's one of the
Yeah.
greatest scenes.
Think about John McCain. Think about George Bush and what they were
Yeah,
like. Now compare them to DeSantis. It's literally light years away.
So, Curtis, you kind of touched on like legacy media. You guys already spoke a little bit, at least last episode, on social media, and so I guess that the trend is that they might be gaining a little bit more control. So I want to kind of just bring up some of the concerns surrounding TikTok. You guys might be familiar with the potential divestiture or banning of it based on some privacy and potential espionage by the Chinese government. So I kind of just want to throw this out there. Maybe I'll give you the floor to start this off on what your opinion is on it, and if you think the way that the U.S. government's approaching it is good or bad.
So I think that they don't really have any proof that the Chinese are using it with like malintent to basically infiltrate the minds of Americans. I mean, maybe they are. I don't think they are, but I could see where the concern would rise. But I don't think that that's what they're actually concerned about. I think the American politicians are just trying to pass a bill where they get more control over internet companies and social media platforms. And there was another very interesting point of view that Glenn Greenwald gave. And so I found it very curious that
he's really left wing.
Yeah. I found it very curious that Vivek Ramaswamy and Donald Trump, so both Republican, well, you know, Vivek, if you want to, the Indian guy.
Yeah, I think I do.
Yeah. So anyways, so about a year ago, so he said it was the equivalent of a digital fentanyl. Trump wanted to ban TikTok as well. And now all of a sudden they've changed their tune. So I'm thinking like, why are they changing the tune? So number one, someone affiliated with ByteDance is a donor to the party, to the Republican Party.
What's ByteDance?
It's the
ByteDance.
The company that owns TikTok.
Yeah, the company that owns
the Chinese.
Tencent.
No,
it's Chinese. It's
ByteDance.
ByteDance.
Yeah, it's ByteDance.
Basically the CCP.
So it could be that, and then the other point, and that definitely would have an impact on, or that would influence how they feel about TikTok. The second point I found interesting was, if I'm Trump, and I'm going to be the Republican nominee, and TikTok's no longer around, what are the social media platforms that are going to be the most influential in the upcoming election? And I think we would all agree that would most likely be Facebook.
X.
Yeah.
Or X as well. That's a really good point as well. But let's say Facebook. So I'm not sure if it's the politicians that are trying to, but then again, it was a bipartisan decision.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone wants to do that. So
Everybody
that's
wanted
where that argument kind of gets thrown to the side.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to bring up some points, and this is from the All In podcast that I found very interesting.
Those guys are the best.
Yeah, they're fantastic. And so
They spoke about this. Which
they
is,
did speak
yeah.
about this. So I'm basically just going to repeat whatever David Sachs said. So if you look at, you'll appreciate this.
He spoke about the Patriot Act. That's what you're going to bring up.
So it's like it comes down to, so it's not just a ban. So he's talking about this. It's not just a ban on TikTok, but it goes after, this is in the wordings, foreign adversary controlled applications. So this could be any application, program, social media platform that's controlled or influenced by either Russia, China, Iran, or North Korea. Those are the like the bad boys on their list. Okay, those countries there. And then he goes, what makes a company, the definitions goes, what makes a company like TikTok or any other company controlled by a foreign adversary? Adversary being those four countries. So if a foreign company like ByteDance directly owns the company, that would be a Chinese company. B, a foreign entity that has 20% or more invested in the company. So you could be, for example, an X where Elon, I know this isn't the case, Elon owns 80% of X and a Chinese pension fund owns the other 20%. That could cause an issue. And he goes, David Sachs says this, he goes, the third one, and this is where it's very vague, goes a person subject to the direction or, this is the actual wording, a person subject.
Wording of what?
The law that they're trying to pass, that they're trying to put through. A person, and this is in the definitions, a person subject to the direction or control of a foreign person or entity. Okay, so that is extremely vague. So you could argue that, and this is the example Sachs gave, you could argue, for example, Elon Musk with his factory in China for the Teslas, is that subject to the direction or control of a foreign person or entity? And someone with bad intentions could make that argument. So the point I'm trying to make about TikTok ban, I don't think they really care about actually banning TikTok. I think they're trying to get more control. What's the saying there? All bad ideas in Washington are bipartisan.
Oh,
and
yeah,
it's just like
the last one was the
like
Patriot
it's just
Act.
yeah they argue.
That's funny because I was just gonna say.
But the point, I just want to make this last point. I'll let you go. Like the point I'm just trying to make is like they argue, they're at each other's necks all day. They fight, and all of a sudden now to ban TikTok, they've come together and go, we need to do this for the American people. And I am always skeptical when politicians do that. That's my point.
And I was gonna say, I literally was gonna say a version of the quote that you just gave.
Yeah.
Like that, like we should be skeptical of bipartisan decisions.
Yeah.
Because sometimes they can be bipartisan for multiple reasons. Now, the ideal reason that they would be bipartisan is because they both agree that it would be good for their constituents.
But I don't think that's it.
Another reason that they could be bipartisan is that they both agree that it is politically popular regardless of whether the facts back up what they're saying. It's politically popular to be against China and to instill fear in China as an adversary and to do something to harm China. You know what I mean? So that's just an aside. Now, I like banning TikTok. Now, I think TikTok is a little bit of an outlier in that the Chinese Communist Party actually owns a certain portion of them. But at the end of the day, what you're and I get that the Chinese Communist Party, I think it's clear that they're dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, like I think that's clear.
Yeah.
So I understand why it's happening, but I think it's also hiding a bit of the problem in that the fact that these companies can gather this much data on you is the problem. Not that like TikTok is not inherently bad. What's bad is the company's ability to because if China has access to that data, and if they mean to use it in a nefarious way, it is very powerful information. So I don't know if they're doing that or not, but I don't want.
What do you agree with the ban or no?
I don't really know. What I think is that I don't want anyone having that data. I don't want anyone having that power over a large group of people, regardless of whether, like, yes, I think it's universally known that the Chinese government is dangerous, but at least you know what they're doing, or you can, like, not you know what they're doing, but like,
You know
I
their
don't want Mark Zuckerberg having this much information on me either.
But they do.
Because I think he's going to also use it for nefarious purposes. Now, is he going to use it to wage war? No.
No, he'll use it to make more money.
Yeah. And to maybe at the expense of everybody else.
I think that we could all agree that our phones do listen to us. You say any sort of thing, and then you get an ad. So we can all agree on that.
And there's no one. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No. I was just going to say that based on that, and we know that most of these companies, if not all of them, do have access to that data, there is something to be said that, yes, I agree with you, no company should have that kind of data, but it is a little crazy that and they all in kind of said this, I'm paraphrasing, but they were like, there's a possibility that an intern in the White House has his phone in his pocket and TikTok's listening and he's in the Oval Office and then they say something and the CCP has access to that information. So I don't know if it's a fairy tale or not, and they brought up tons of points. You guys should definitely listen to that. But if they don't agree with the divestiture, and this is another point they brought up,
they won't.
Then that also kind of says that, well, why don't they want to do that? And then probably it will be banned because they don't want to give their data away.
No, they just don't want to give their company away. Like it's simple. Like they're not gonna. China is not gonna capitulate to anything the U.S. wants.
We also
and they don't give a shit about the money.
No.
Like they don't care about. Oh, if you sell it to if you buy it for a good enough price, we'll get. No. They're just not going to want to fold to the U.S. asking them for anything.
Yeah.
If the U.S. said we're going to give you $10 trillion, I don't think China would sell it to them.
Say no.
Yeah,
they still
because
say no.
Because then it's a loss for this totalitarian, and he will not accept that.
But don't you just see? So it's like, well, why do you have? I just have a question. So it's like you agree that China's like a totalitarian regime, and like you don't think that like if you have the more influence government has, that becomes a risk?
No.
In the West, you don't think it does?
No. I mean, sorry. Okay, there's always a risk of that happening, and I think the biggest risk of that happening is not with left wingers right now. It's with Donald Trump.
With Trump, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not one economic philosophy that makes it more or less likely to have somebody like that emerge. As a matter of fact, what makes it more likely to have somebody like that emerge is a disenfranchised population with nothing to lose. And that is exactly why Trump was elected in the first place, is because people are angry. People want something different because the system doesn't work for them. And that's what happens before. It's exactly what happened in Nazi Germany. The Germans got a bad deal after World War I. Their population was marginalized to hell.
People were poor, no money.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they got angry. And that is what decisions based on anger produce. So how do you prevent this? You have a thriving middle class, and you make sure that you take care of your citizens, regardless of whether they are on welfare. You make you can judge the civilization of a country by the way it treats its least fortunate, just like you can judge the civilization of a country by the way its prisoners are treated. That's what you don't want to reward laziness. It's a matter of, I want the less fortunate taken care of, because if they're not, it's going to be my problem later. That's why I don't want people angry. And the rich should feel the same way. I don't want to walk down the street and have a bunch of homeless people there.
With shit everywhere.
Yeah. And the
Francisco.
way that you avoid that is you remove the conditions that allowed that to happen in the first place. And if that takes giving away free money, then I'm good with that, because I don't want to see them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
No,
So
I understand what you're trying to say.
And how do you do that? Well, unfortunately, it's the most fair way to do it is to take from the people that can afford it the most. And it doesn't mean.
And this is where we just disagree. We agree
doesn't mean
on
from you.
Yeah,
It doesn't mean from you, and that's the key point, is that the big companies have said they have managed to convince the population that people who say we should increase taxes on them is somehow bad for you. It's not. It's only good for you. But they've managed to keep you in their boat, where they say this is bad for all of us with money, everyone, even the guy that makes 200 grand. They're coming after us. They've included you in that boat, because if they don't, they're going to lose, because they're the minority. That's why they've done that. If I tell you today, okay, that we can eliminate the homeless problem, you will never have to see a homeless person again. And we have to take $50,000 from every person with more than $500 million. Would you be okay with that?
In a hypothetical scenario, yes, but that would never happen. It was kind of
commie.
Why would that never happen?
Because we got to wrap it up.
Yeah.
It's just like, there was a tweet once, some guy was tweeting over to Elon Musk, and they said, if Elon Musk donated $4 billion or whatever the hell it was, $1 billion, it would solve world hunger. It wouldn't exist. And so Elon Musk responds back saying, if you tell me exactly how my $4 billion throwing money at the problem is going to solve this, like point by point in detail, I will donate that money immediately. Because it'll obviously never happen, because you can't throw money at problems, and this is where
can't, and that's why it shouldn't be based on
donations. This is where we differ. So it's like, basically my opinion is, when you give it to the government and they're there to redistribute the wealth, they're so bad at it.
So what?
That I agree.
Who's better?
But to a point. And I'm just saying that there will always be the marginalized. There will always be the disenfranchised. There will always be poor people. Just because.
Yes, but to a certain extent.
I agree.
You could be poor, right? And
we
still
agree
be
on the
happy.
same things. We agree on the same things, like the what's actually happening. And when you have too many poor people, society breaks. I agree, and you need to take care of them. Totally agree. I just have a different opinion on how we should go about it. And again, I think it's always somewhere in the middle. But we got to wrap it up.
I just wanted to say thank you, Curtis, for having me on as host. I hope I did a good job.
We didn't let you talk so much.
No. I really liked listening to you guys. I thought it wasn't as spicy. It could have got a little spicier. You guys both played it pretty safe.
Yeah, it was.
I think you guys played it pretty safe.
This wasn't my intention. I was honestly just like, I didn't.
Yeah.
We were kind of.
Yeah.
We agree a lot more than people think we do.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
guess.
think so.
You know, whatever. Let's end on a hot take.
On a
One
hot-
question,
Yeah,
and you
okay.
guys answer or don't answer.
Yeah,
I guess it
go
doesn't
for
matter.
it.
Hot take. Next U.S. election, if you could vote, who would you vote for?
I'm not answering that
There we
question.
go.
I probably wouldn't.
RFK. I'd
I'd go
vote
independent.
for
I
RFK.
just
Yeah,
wanted
I'd
to
vote for
throw that out
I don't know
RFK
any of his
independent.
policies,
All
so
right,
I
guys.
can't tell you.
You're the best. I respect both of you.
Thank you for
let's
being
do it
here,
again.
Mike.
Thanks, Mike.